Hey everybody, this is Don Asher, and I want to tell you a story about a student getting a job. So this is really for college students thinking about looking for work, but it's also for anyone who wants to understand how the hidden job market actually works. So I ran a retail career counseling company in San Francisco's financial district for 20 years. And it was my company. And so they saved all the weird or odd people for me because they knew that I liked them. So this student comes into my office, and we didn't work with lots of students because we were kind of expensive, but he came into my office, and I thought, well, this may be an interesting assignment. He came in, and I said, what kind of job are you looking for? And he said, well, here's my resume. So I'm looking at his resume, and it was all biology, and he was about to graduate from Cal Berkeley. And I said, this is a great resume. And it had autoclaves, DNA sequencing, really hot resume for an undergrad in sciences. And I said, this is the best biology resume I've ever seen. Where did you learn how to do this? He said, at the Career Center at Berkeley. I said, you owe them a debt of gratitude. This is the best biology resume I've ever seen. And then he said, oh, I don't want to work in biology. So I said, what do you want to do? He said, well, I want to be a residential income property manager. And I looked at him and I said, what's that? Because I didn't know. And he said, an apartment manager. I said, apartment manager? You got a degree from Berkeley and you want to be an apartment manager? And that kind of hurt his feelings. So he walked over to my window and he just starts pointing at things out across the skyline of San Francisco. He said, you see that complex over there? That's over 600 apartments. They have a 24-hour day staff, probably 30 people work there. He said, see that building over there? That's 17 floors. Each floor is one house. And so that's probably $3 million per floor. They have a 24-hour day staff. He said, of course, it's a professional career track position, and I want it. I said, okay, but this resume's never going to work. It's all wrong. It's all biology. And he said, well, what should I do? I'll do anything you say. Now, my friends, if you want career counselors to help you, you say that sentence and they melt. Okay, I was getting ready to throw the guy out and tell him we were too expensive. After he said that, I said, I'm going to help you get a job. So I said, what you need to do is go out and go into those buildings to show them this resume and say, I know this resume doesn't have the right stuff on it, but what would you need to see on this resume to be interested in me? And he said, you can do that? Just walk into places and ask for the manager? I said, absolutely. And it's the best thing for you to do when you have no skills at all. Now that didn't seem to hurt his feelings for some reason. And I told him, if you come in on Fridays, we had open hours on Fridays. If you come in on Friday and you have done during the week what you said you would last week, I'll meet with you for free. But the first week you don't show up or the first week you don't do it, all bets are off and you're on your own. So he said, okay, I'd love to do that. So he goes out, he comes back in a week and he said, Don, this is working. I showed her my resume the first place I went and the woman looked at it a really long time. And then she said, biology. We don't do a lot of biology around here. As a matter of fact, we try to keep biology to a minimum. So he said, that famous line, what would you need to see on that resume to be interested in me? And she said, I'd need to see some accounting background. We do it, which is a business here. Again, we're not a biology lab. And he said, accounting, well, I do have some accounting background. I never took accounting, but I was treasurer for my fraternity. And she said, well, what did that involve? Because that may be enough background. And he said, well, for example, we were a pretty big operation. We bought $23,000 a year in beer alone. So now he had on his resume, he was treasurer for a fraternity and bought $23,000 a year in beer alone. So I said to him, Aiden, you can't say beer on a college resume. So he came back the next week and he had changed it. We buy $23,000 a year in liquid refreshments. Now, that doesn't fool anybody because it's a fraternity. What do you think those refreshments are? But you can only help people so much, and then you have to let them be who they are. So I left that in there because it was part of who Aiden was. So he goes out another week, and he comes back and he says, I'm really learning some stuff. I was in this guy's office, and he said, do you know anything about the trades? And Aiden said, trades? Like trade what? Like trade baseball cards? And the guy said, no, the trades, carpentry, electrical, plumbing, and painting. And he said, well, I know a little bit about all of those because, we ran the house. We had to fix it a lot of times, so we fixed all that stuff ourselves. So now he says basic knowledge of the trades, carpentry, electrical, plumbing, and painting. And then he says, we put things to projects to bid in the summer, vetted contractors, supervised site work. All of this is appearing under this fraternity. And the biology is getting pushed down. Autoclaves disappears, DNA sequencing disappears. The whole top of the resume is about this stuff. He comes back in a week and he says, I had a major breakthrough this week. I said, what was it? He said, I was in this woman's office and she said, I would love to hire you, but I can't. And he said, why? She said, because you don't speak Spanish and my whole crew speaks Spanish. If you don't speak Spanish, you can't work here. So Aiden said, yo hablo un poquito español. She said, where did you learn Spanish? He said, spring break. And he had done the whole Rosetta Stone thing. He could actually speak pretty good basic Spanish. She still didn't hire him in spite of that, but his resume is now, it's really sterling. Now, I want to stress that this didn't happen overnight. We're now like 5 weeks into this, and every single day he's been out talking to people. So then he came in and he broke my heart. He came in and he said, Don, I don't want to be a residential income property manager anymore. And I went like this, Aiden, that's terrible, man. You're about to get a job. I know you're about to get a job. Why would you walk away from that? He said, I want to be a commercial property manager. And I said, well, that's interesting, but that's a credential position in California. You can't get that position. And he said, well, yes, I can, because the credential is not a legal requirement, and it's just a practice. And besides, only the senior officers on a property have that credential. Most of the other people working there don't. He said, you should get out more. So he knows his stuff now. So I said, all right, that could work. So he went out. It took about 3 or 4 more weeks. So I want to stress that we're now like 3 months into this, and he's been working at it every day. He told me that the information that he knew that helped him get his first job in commercial property management, he knew for only 15 minutes. He's in this high-rise in the financial district, and the guy is talking to him about a job as a leasing agent. And he said, the guy said to him, I can't use you. You're too young. You don't know anything about commercial property. He said, you don't even know what a triple net lease is. So Aiden, ever the eager student, said, what's a triple net lease? And the guy says, well, it's monthly rent, a monthly pass-through for utilities, and an annual assessment for repairs. And he said, oh, that's really interesting. Great. So he goes downstairs, walks across the street, goes up into another building, asks for the manager and says, I would like to be a leasing agent. I know what a triple net lease is. I know quite a bit about tenant improvements, TI. He called it TI, which is tenant improvements. I can draw a utility trunk on the back of an envelope. All of this he learned by the act of looking for work. And so the woman said, I don't know, man. So he pulled out, I taught him to have a prop, always have a prop. So he pulled out a laser tape and he said, for example, I know that a lot about commercial property. This room is 12 feet 6 inches wide. He had a little laser tape that he got at Home Depot. And so he said, that's great for oriental carpets and really bad for regular carpets. She said, oh yeah, you do know that, don't you? So she took his tape away from him and starts measuring rooms on her floor. And then she turns to him and she says, do you know anything about newsletters? And Aiden, who's just a young person, said, I can figure it out, sure. She said, well, if you could do the newsletter, I hate doing the newsletter for the building. If you could do the newsletter, I could have you do that half-time, and you could be a half-time leasing agent. And so Aiden said, I accept, I love it. So he came by to see me, he tells me this whole story. He's starting the next morning at 8 a.m., and the information that he knew to lock in that offer, he had possessed for 15 minutes. That's the hidden job market. You have to go out and talk to people, and you have to know the secret lingo. If you can talk to them and you know the secret lingo, you can get a job.